Lower Decks burst onto the scene with Second Contact, giving us a fresh, hilarious, and sometimes questionable look at life aboard a Starfleet vessel. But does this first episode boldly go where no comedy has gone before, or does it trip over its own holodeck banana peel? Join Craig and myself as we break down what's good, what's bad, and what's completely batshit crazy, or kind of all of it, I would have thought, about Second Contact. Warp me. Lower decks, lower
Lower
decks.
decks. I got you with that earlier. You've got the
Oh,
woo.
absolutely. I've been excited for this one. Yeah. Uh, I so right off the bat, Lower Decks is definitely one of my favorite treks, if not my favorite. I know it's definitely top
That's a
three.
big intake.
It's definitely top three. I mean, Deep Space Nine will always be special, but Lower Decks is something else.
I like it. I enjoy it, but I don't love it like you do. Um,
Oh,
yeah. I've watched it religiously. Don't get us wrong. The second it came up on streaming every week, it was straight watched. Everything was pushed to one side to watch it. Uh,
yeah.
some of it I absolutely loved. Some of it I could take or leave, but we'll get into that when we do your good, your bad, and your is it batshit this week?
Batshit. We can say batshit now, yes. We absolutely will. I must admit, when it was first announced, I was cautiously optimistic about it.
To me, I yeah, I was probably the similar in in the respect of it's animated, okay, it's a comedy, okay. Is it going to be clever? Is it going to be or is it just going to be jokes for the sake of jokes and just taking the Mickey out of Star Trek?
Mm, yes.
And it because you look at something like that. I mean, it could have gone either way.
Mm,
Could have gone either way, and I think it went the right way. I mean, pardon me. To say at the minute, I'm in a similar frame of mind at the minute, looking into the future. If they actually get the sitcom off the ground. Tony Newsom's
Tony
working on
Newsom's, yeah,
working on a work based sitcom.
yeah. Star Trek meets The Office, I think she's described
Yeah,
it as.
and I think the latest Tom Tom drums coming from America, even though it's still in the discussions, they've got to get it right. I think
Mm,
that she is interested in bringing Mariner into it,
right.
which I think wasn't the initial thought, but I think it's going more in that direction now. Whether it happens or not,
Mm. I know she said that it's that basically the time frame in which it's set has been shifting as discussions have gone on. So maybe they've moved it to more like 2380s
so
then.
we shall
Mm.
see. But we're getting sequel time before we even get to the main event. But no,
We are
it's
indeed.
yeah. I think that it it worked better than I probably anticipated, and it does hold up as a piece
Yes.
of Star Trek.
Yes. I so very much like yourself, I was a bit unsure. So I'm a big fan of Rick and Morty. Um,
See, I've never really watched Rick and Morty, so I didn't have a base to
right.
go from. So I
Right.
came into it blind.
Okay. Well, I mean, complete aside here. I actually hated Rick and Morty when I first watched the first season. Um, and I had to watch it a couple more times, and it sort of I started to get it a little bit more. I don't know if that just means I'm really dense or something.
Not really, because I was exactly the same with South Park when it started.
Right.
I really didn't like it until you actually get where it's coming from. And I think
Mm.
it's probably a similar thing with Rick and Morty.
Yeah, well, I'm a huge Rick and Morty fan now, but I obviously that's McMahon's pedigree. Um, so when I heard he was going to be behind Lower Decks, I was like, please, not the same humor. Because as much as it's funny, it's not Star Trek,
Yeah.
and I can see kind of hints of it here and there, but yeah, it's proper Star Trek. Yeah. Like I said, we're going to be going into a lot of this with our good, bad, and bad shit. But before we do, so we're talking specifically about the pilot episode, Second
Second
Contact.
Contact.
Um, but so first thing we need to do, and because this is a 20 odd minute episode rather than a full job, you're going to get a 30-second synopsis for
Oh dear.
this.
Right, I've got something that might work.
Excellent. Well, if you're ready, or even if you're not, your time starts now.
Ensign Tendi has her first day of work on Starfleet's USS Cerritos, where she meets three fellow support crew members, Ensigns Mariner, Boimler, and Rutherford. Meanwhile, Boimler is tasked with a secret special assignment, and Rutherford attempts to keep his dating life intact while an outbreak of zombies strikes the ship. That'll
Okay,
do,
you got 5
because
seconds
otherwise,
left.
monsters in space.
There we go. That's your 30 seconds up. Well, that's yeah, not bad. I'm being generous, but
It's SH1T.
it's yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm saying not bad. That was sort of that had some elements. Let's put it that.
Okay.
Leave it
Like a
there.
kettle.
But as ever, I think it's fair to say that anybody watching this video has seen
Has
Second
already seen it.
Contact. So yeah, and we're not going to do spoiler alerts or anything like that. So let's dive straight into what we thought was good about it. First of all, what's your first good?
I think the whole aesthetic of the show, the design of it, the way that the animation is, and it works. It's not CGI. It's tradition. It's done as traditional animation. The like the set designs and everything like that. It fits perfectly into like the next generation or later next generation stylistic, and I think it's obviously being made by fans of the show and the fans of Star Trek, fans of Next Generation. They knew what they were doing, and they didn't do it in such a way that let's just plonk this in just to make the fans go, oh look, the holodeck looks like this, or the bridge looks like this, or the transport room looks like this. They've done it aesthetically and with the technology that makes sense for Star Trek, as well as it being a
Yes,
comedy.
yes, yeah. That's so the second part of that is very similar to my first one is how it's a love letter to Star Trek.
Yeah.
You know, the all the references and Easter eggs and every moment is has got something that is a callback or yeah. It's just absolutely beautiful. And some obscure things in there as well, especially as the series gets going.
I mean, yeah, if you look at the title sequence at the end of the title sequence, where the Cerritos is turning up and there's a battle between the Romulans and the Borg, and they turn tail and run. But each season adds a different adversary onto that battle.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
by the end, by the end of like season five, you've got everything from the probe from Star Trek 4 to VJ and everything else all involved in this
Yeah,
massive
the
great
crystalline
interstellar kickoff.
entities in
Crystal, yeah,
there, and
every
the green hand.
yeah, just everything turns up in it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, that's uh but I also think it managed to in spite of cramming everything full of reference, that sounds like you have to have watched every single episode of Star Trek, which we have, to be fair, um, in order to get it. I think I'm speculating here. Perhaps one of our viewers can attest to this, but I suspect that it's accessible to newcomers to the franchise as well.
Yeah, I
It's got
mean
that
the
vibe to it.
yeah, I mean was there a bit where she's referencing it was at the end of the episode where she's like referencing loads of characters, where she take and even mentions a Gary Mitchell and things and stuff like that. You don't know him, look him up.
Yeah. Well, they do that
But yeah.
in is that the second episode when Ransom gets godlike powers? Stranger is
Mm.
I know the episode's called Strange Energies. I can't remember if it's the second or third in the
Mm.
season.
Yeah, it's later on, yeah.
But yeah, they talk about Gary Mitchell and they use the animation style from the animated series when they show Kirk and crew, which I think is just absolutely amazing. There's a few references to the animated series in the whole thing. Big Spock as well is in there later.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my first. What you got for your second good?
I'm going to go traditional. What we always say is I think they had inspired casting for the roles because it's and not going to play gushing, but it's good to see when you've cast a crew and then you see this crew do interviews and you see this crew do all the promotional stuff and everything like that and you see how much they love being part of it.
Mm, yeah.
They love their characters. They seem to really love each other. They love being part. And it. I think it's one of the casts that seem to have gelled together really quickly. And considering where a lot of the recording, they might have actually even just been on their own. They might not have actually been all together. There's a lot of when you do, being an actor yourself, very well any kind of voice work and stuff like that. Very rarely is a cast actually together for something like that.
I can tell you that when they started, we were still in lockdown.
COVID, yeah, COVID, yeah.
Um, and I know, oh gosh, her name has suddenly escaped me. They stand in Noel,
Plays Tandy.
place tender. Yeah.
Yeah,
She was talking about like having to basically create a sound studio in her understairs cupboard
yeah, yeah,
and spend like 8 hours a day in there. It was like a bit warm, um, as these things are.
yeah.
But yeah. So they were actually in lockdown, so they were definitely not. There was no contact or face to face. So yeah, the fact that they have gelled so well together as a cast is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, that's a good
And I
one.
think, yeah, I also, I'm going to do a pet lip here. Even though I say it's not one of my favorite Star Trek series, I do enjoy it. I just think considering how much goodwill it's got in the fandom, and that it is not exactly the most expensive Star Trek series to make, why finish at season five? It's not. I mean, it's obviously it's above everybody's pay grade to understand the numbers and everything behind it. But there's something that could have ran, and I can't say the cast being that ridiculously expensive to do. But yeah, that's my bitch moan.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I've not heard an official reason for it, other than the usual sort of fluffiness that gets put out. Oh well, we've told our story, or all that kind of um,
The only thing I can
nonsense.
think is with streamers, Netflix are the most guilty of this, and Amazon are quite similar. if they do not believe it's going to bring new people to the streaming platform,
Mm.
if they think it is peaked as a piece of material that isn't going to get you anybody extra, they'll drop it.
There is that. It always comes down to viewing figures
Yeah.
ultimately. And you say like you can't imagine the cast being that expensive. I can tell you in the industry that when someone is a major character, maybe not a lead character even, but when they're a major character and they're in a series that is repeating, their agents do hike their price
Oh
quite
yes,
substantially.
if they had a 5 season deal goes on to season six, I mean it happened with Next Generation and everything, didn't it? With Voyager DS9, as soon as you hit that past the 5 season deal to get this stuff off there, it's like ka-ching, and shows that suddenly had a budget of $2 million have a budget of $5 million, and then the ratings don't equate to
Yeah.
what they did in earlier years. So this is where you've really got to be careful with the numbers.
Ratings tend to drop over time. Even with something as popular as Lower Decks, the first couple of seasons, I haven't seen the ratings, but I can imagine ratings for the first couple of seasons were way higher. Because especially like now we've gotten used to it, people, you and me will like the moment it drops on Amazon Prime or Netflix or whatever, we're there for it. But most people aren't like that, and it's like, oh, there's a new load. Oh yeah, well we'll get around to watching that once we've finished the latest. So, once we've finished season 83 of Better Call Saul or whatever.
I mean, to be fair, I think what I've been guilty of with that this season round was the second season of House of the Dragon. Game of
Mm.
Thrones, it was the day that it was out. It was the nanosecond. Even the first season of House of Dragon, I was there. But second season of House of Dragon, I kid you not. I mean, that I only watched that about 2 or 3 months ago. And that was pretty
Mm.
much like a year after it had been broadcast, which
Yeah.
is not like me because generally something like that would be must see TV.
I think as audiences, we have a tendency to expect subsequent seasons to not be as groundbreaking or as fresh or as good, ultimately, as the first ones as well. So I think that plays into it. So yeah, I mean, we can speculate all day about why there isn't a season six yet. I'd love to see a full feature movie.
Like Section 31. How
No,
difficult would it
no,
be for
no,
them to do?
good.
You know what I meant.
I mean, a cinema piece, not just a TV movie, a cinema movie of Lower Decks. Yeah. I'm probably hoping a bit
You
much
are.
there.
Shoot for the moon.
So yeah, so the casting overall that's your second choice. I think that's a great one. Mine's quite similar. Mine's about the characters though, rather than the actors, and the way in which they're introduced. I think pilots have an incredibly difficult time because you're throwing lots of characters and I know I've said in previous ones like we felt like we haven't had enough backstory from these characters and that, and even with the short runtime though, I felt we understood these characters really quickly, really well, who they were, where they were coming from. Um, Now, I mean, it is quite frantic in the way it's all delivered, but I think animation kind of lends itself a bit to that anyway. There's even a line in the Strange New Worlds crossover episode where Mariner and Bowman are saying, "Have you noticed how slowly they all talk?" like, um, yeah. So yeah, but the way the characters are introduced, I feel, is really strong. It pays off brilliantly, and it sets up dynamics that really drive the series forward. What's your
No.
third?
Well, this is a it's a good second contact story. I know they've had first contact, but it's one thing we've been talking about with Voyager and with Enterprise, with Next Generation. They are all first contact stories to
Mhm.
some lesser degree. This being a second contact story, and it's entertaining where it's a virus story and it's a Star Trek does comedy zombies. I mean, they've done zombie kind of story before with the Vulcans on Enterprise, but they've never really done a proper, eat your brains kind of zombie thing. And I think I agree with you. It's a really fast paced, entertaining story that they've crammed so much into the short running time, and it is quite batshit in its own right.
Mm.
I think it was a good choice for a first episode because it hits the different it hits the different marks.
Yeah, but it's not so frenetic that you can't follow it. It's not like a
Yeah,
Michael Bay action sequence, which is just visual noise. It's yeah, I feel it's yeah, well done
yeah, and
in that
it's all
regard.
yeah, and it's also quite funny. Just like Enterprise, they managed to get two of the main characters into the undies.
I'm gonna hold my thoughts about Second Contact as a thing for later on.
Yeah,
But
I just like it as a comedy thing.
well, funny that is what my third is
Yeah.
you get some genuinely funny moments. And I've even made a note about the whole bizarre zombie outbreak being just genuinely funny. And I think, shout out to Jack Quaid here, as Boimler. I think he delivers him so perfectly with those little screams and yells and his pitiful whining. Why isn't it your trousers? Like kind of thing. Um, yeah, just absolutely, it's so genuinely funny. And speaking of zombies, we've got to mention, really looking forward to Strange New World season 3.
There's, yeah.
Yeah.
Thing is, though, actually, work out what timeline. So when we're recording this episode, we are near the end of May. So was this episode be out by the time that season three starts or just before?
No, this goes out before season 3. So this
Ah, good.
episode, hello to those of you on the 4th of July. Oh, Independence Day. Happy Independence Day, everyone, or
Yeah,
happy
bet you wishing
traitor.
you stayed now.
Yeah, happy Traitors Day. Um,
Yeah,
the redcoats are coming.
complained about taxes and tea now. Yeah, now see what you're gonna put up with. Yeah.
Yeah,
If you want
indeed.
to reapply, just contact the address below at hmrc.gov.uk.
No, exiting from Britain or Brexit means Brexit, apparently. Can't have
Oh,
another referendum.
oh no.
Uh,
Okay. Well, that'll teach you.
anyway, teaches us all, I think. We're following close in the footsteps anyway. Um, right,
You've
so
lost your train of thought now, haven't you?
I'm going to bring it straight back. So, speaking of Brexit, we do need to talk about what was bad about this episode. How's that for a segue?
That's a segue. Yeah.
Except this
I am.
episode does have benefits. Yeah.
Yes, it does. Now, my one is and it's not meant to be mean, is sometimes, I mean, the comedy in it generally is good. Sometimes I find that it gets a little bit too manic and a little bit too zany. But I think it's just the fact that with Next Generation, it had its humor in, but was always quite gentle humor.
Mm,
It was never ta-da kind of humor. And I understand in the style of the show, it needed it. And there are some absolutely fantastic laugh out loud moments. But sometimes, and I've got a few friends would like it, but they say that something like Dave and people like that I know who they just say sometimes the humor is just too broad and it's just trying to be too crazy, and they can't latch on to the zeit of it, the whole. And I get it, I get it.
Yes. Um, yeah, my first one is not dissimilar. It's about how the pacing, as fast and frenetic as we were just talking about in the goods, um, yeah, isn't very Trek.
Hmm.
It's not, and I'm saying this looking at the pilot on its own, and we know what Lower Decks went on to become, and it is definitely it's as Trek. It's the Trekkiest Trek of all the Trek for me. Um, but that frenetic pace could be a little bit jarring for some people, I think.
Yeah, but this is the thing that I always found with Next Generation, where sometimes it was just too plodding in certain aspects. The ship was going to red alert, and then people were just strolling along the corridors. There was no like running to get anywhere. Or there was sometimes the sense of urgency wasn't there with Next Generation. And to be fair, it was a lot different even in DS9 and Voyager. They're not as pedestrian as what Next Generation sometimes felt.
Mm, yeah.
So it's getting the middle ground right.
Yeah.
But I did find the series hilarious. So
When was the last time you watched any 70s sci-fi? Your Logan's Run or
it
Planet of
has
the Apes or
been a while. Actually, it's not that long since I watched Planet of the Apes, and their pacing is a lot slower.
yeah, everything's all about setting up the mood and establishing the
But
characters
do
and the
you do you remember
premise.
something? Do you remember
Go on.
something? Now, cast your mind back. Cast your mind. Do you remember when you actually watched a film or a TV series and it was actually linear? It didn't start off with an action piece, then 48 hours earlier, a week earlier, a month earlier, and then actually the story went from A to B to C. You didn't
Yeah.
start off at Z, end up at F, go to B, then to A, then to...
Yeah, audience expectations. These days, audiences don't have the patience that they used to. It'd be like, okay, sit down, you relax, you've got your popcorn, you've got your drink. It's like, okay, you sort of soak the atmosphere, the message, the build up, like, oh, there's a new person. I wonder what they're going to be like. You don't expect to know like instantly. Whereas now, there's got to be a massive hook. There's got to be a
Yes.
like, oh no, this is life threatening. What's happening? Audience expectations. I blame the audiences.
Yes, it's all their fault. Stop being so stupid.
So yeah, I
I don't.
think
I'm an audience man. Do.
we're all the audience there. That was the yeah. Anyway, um, so yes, I get that. That's what audiences expect now. Anyway, what's your second bad one?
Um, I think it's in a similar vein. In even though I do like the format, I do like the aesthetic and everything of it. I think sometimes, I mean, there's certain instances where it gets too cartoony in respect of some of the designs. You look at in this episode where you've got, I mean, there's the comedy value of it. You've got the spider cow,
Hmm.
and it's similar to Star Trek the animated series, where yes, it's stuff that you couldn't realize on film, but it takes it out of it a little bit, thinking that doesn't look quite right for Star Trek. It's a bit too cartoony.
Yeah, yeah, a bit too Looney Tunes, like when the spider's spitting him up in the air and that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things where you're trying to keep your suspension of disbelief that this is Star Trek and this is something that this is where you try to look at it thinking, could this be done in live action? Well, you know that Lower
Mm.
Decks can be done in live action because of what they did with the crossover on these old scientists on Strange New Worlds. It is canon. It is canon technically. You've
Yes.
got your crossover like that, and this is the only bit where my Star Trek fan head sizzles a little bit, going, "That's not quite right. It's just not how it necessarily should be." But it's a cartoon, so how would that look in real? In done with actors and CGI, and that's
Mm,
it. And that's something that's the only problem that I have with this, and also with a bit with Prodigy, where you're trying to merge your brain into what fits in your head canon. I mean,
yeah.
as much as I love Star Wars, I can't get into the animated versions of Star Wars. Your Rebels and your Clone Wars and things like that. It's just for me the aesthetics and stuff don't work. I'm not looking down on cartoons or animation or anything like that in the slightest. It's just how my brain processes things. Am I trying
Mm.
to be too grown up with it? I don't know.
No, no. Well, I would say as an answer to that, maybe this will satisfy your headcanon. Those old scientists gave us a canonical explanation as to why everything appears cartoonish with the Orion Dulux at the end. So basically, they're off their face on
On
Orion LSD.
LSD, yeah. So if I got to sit there, if I got to get myself like hyped up on sugar or something like that.
I mean, there's always LSD. Don't do drugs, kids.
LDS, come on.
LDS, yes, that's the one, which some people use as a three-letter acronym for lower decks.
Okay, yes,
It
I
all
get it that
fits
way. So
together.
so
It
so
all fits
basically, be
together.
off be off your baps to watch Star Trek, right?
Yeah, but no, I get where you're coming from. Like I say, I can see that. For me, I'm right. I'm going to hold up my hands here. I felt like I was really reaching with these bads.
I'm the
I
same.
struggled to find things I didn't like, but I didn't want to let people down. So this next one is not something that I find bad, but I know lots of Star Trek fans, not lots, some Star Trek fans do find a problem with, which is the comedy style. So we've kind of been alluding to this a little bit on and off anyway, but in particular the irreverent tone that it takes. Um, I mean, like we said, it's a love letter to Star Trek, but at the same time, it doesn't mind poking fun. Now, for me, I personally love that. I'm one of those people who, it's not a true friendship unless you've got like banter and take the piss out of each other. Um, but
Well, we've took the
yeah,
mickey out of each other for the last 40 years nearly, so it's
yeah, this is true. This is true. Uh, uh, but yeah, I'm talking about when people actually like each other.
oh, here we go.
But no, uh, yeah, I know that there are plenty, possibly not the majority, but plenty of Star Trek fans who don't like the irreverent nature of the comedy. That's my second bat.
See,
I feel real dirty here.
I'm with you that the kind of the comedy that it's the manic comedy that I'm not that keen on sometimes. But the irreverent comedy, that's we love that in any case. That's you know,
Yeah,
if you don't take the Mickey out of the people that you love, who can you take the Mickey out of?
exactly, exactly. Yes. Although we've been taking the mickey out of Trump as well, and we don't love
No,
that
that's
either.
different thing.
Anyway, what's your third bad?
Right, this is something about the series as a whole, and it's just a personal bitch. I think they did a real good job throughout the series doing character development, but something that was set up right back in the pilot episode that they never gave you a good resolution and how everybody expected and wanted it to be was Tendi and Rutherford. Knowing that those two characters are kind of made for each other, and it's teased. Yes, he was on a date throughout the first episode with somebody who they could have really done. Then by the end of the episode, when they're talking about why things didn't work, and then suddenly they zing together. It's the will they want they kind of thing that's gone on for 5 seasons that they just left it hanging by the end of it. And I know sometimes you can say, oh, getting two characters together is the death of a show kind of thing.
Mm,
But this is just something where it could have given a whole new dynamic to things. But yeah, that's just and it's not an awful thing. It's just something
mm.
that I've got a pet lip about myself. Everybody loves a happy ending.
I can see exactly where you're coming from on that. However, I'm going to say over the 5 seasons, I think it's handled beautifully
Oh, it is, but yeah,
because in like you say, the whole will they won't they thing, it's been done to death, and yet when they finally get together, as they inevitably do, it's well, okay, that's it. But that's the point. They don't get together because they don't need to because they're such good friends. They're perfect best friends.
but it's the 24th century into the 25th century. They can they've got above just the whole thing with Gene Roddenberry and the marriage contracts of the 23rd century where you could just be married for 6 months, or you could do it's a different world in the 24th century.
It
And it would have
is.
been nice for the last episode.
I'm glad they didn't, because I think the message is men and women can be friends. But, they don't have there doesn't have to be a romantic kind of element. And I love the whole um uh what is it, at Darth Ferengi's heart place. Keep wanting to say Garth Marenghi's dark place. No Garth Marenghi references in it. But yeah, that whole thing where they're on this romantic thing and it's like really awkward because they're such good friends. I don't know. I think it turns the trope on its head a little bit, and I'm there
Mhm.
for it. But I get where you're coming from in it. Um,
I'm an old romantic. What was it?
I mean, it's great to see the characters. Yeah, it would be good to see them meeting people, but yeah, each other. No, no, that's the point. They're there for each other. If it was two characters of the same gender, I don't think we'd be questioning it the same way. But because in the 24th century they don't see gender the same way. That's my take on it. It's my personal take. Anyway,
Yeah, that's your number three then.
my number three is how I said about reaching. So it's lower decks, it's focusing on the lower decks, but the bridge crew don't get enough development. Um, I mean, we get to meet Mariner, Boimler, Tandy, Rutherford. Um, but the Captain Freeman, Shax, I feel we're just very light on who they are at that time.
I mean, it does. I mean, they do get developed through the season, and
Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, the running joke with Shax after he gets killed, spoiler alert, and then comes back and just doesn't want to talk about it. I mean, that's.
Oh well, you know about the Black Mountain. You have
But yeah,
five clones of your father. Yeah. Um, there's a little lower deck reference right behind me. You see the koala there.
very good.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I know I'm reaching with that. but I wanted to come up with three bad things. That was the best I could do. So there we go. Let's move on to what was weird because I'm sure we've got a deeper well to draw from here.
Yeah, I didn't want to put this into me bads because I just think it's a little bit like, really? It's the sleeping arrangements for the lower decks crew. You know, the sleeping in a hallway. Now, we all know, and we all know the size of these starships.
Yeah.
We, you think that the amount of the way that the ships look in Star Trek, when you see a lot of crew going back and forwards, realistically, you look at the Galaxy class, like 1,000 or so people on board the Galaxy class wouldn't even cover like a 50th of what the actual space is. You know, the
Mm.
California class is a big starship. You
Yeah.
cannot tell me that they wouldn't have rooms, even if the rooms had bunk beds and things like that in there. It's just, I mean, it's done for a kind of comedy effect, and a kind of thing, but it's a bit like really.
Yeah. I get you on that. And it's in the middle of a corridor as well. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you've always got people passing through, which, yeah, I mean, it's clearly there just for comedic writing reasons and perhaps for um, it's Chekhov's sleeping quarters. That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one, a good bizarre one. So earlier on, you had the second contact concept as one of your goods. It's one of my weirds. The idea that they've got entire ships devoted to following up after first contacts. Uh, I mean, it makes me wonder, like, how many diplomatic, awkward diplomatic mix-ups are they having to deal with in Starfleet? Um,
I mean,
yeah.
it is to me knowing what the world is like for paperwork and everything like that, I do understand it.
I mean, it's fantastic in terms of world building, and that's what Lower Decks does massively and really really well over its 5 years is a lot of Star Trek world building. But yeah, the just the concept of like, okay, we're here to fill out the forms now. Oh dear me. Yeah, and how many awkward? So if they have like a really bad first contact, do they still have a second contact?
Yes. Well,
Hmm.
the funny thing, the funny thing that this whole concept reminds me of is in a real world explanation of it is the TV show Dragon's Den,
Hmm.
where they do, knowing how the show works. Yeah, they did try and get us on it when we had the business years ago, but we said no. Um, the way that it works is what you see on the TV show, where they actually do the deal on the TV show. Then it goes down to like a department to hammer out the actual deal for what they've actually been
Hmm.
promised on the thing. And what a lot of people don't know is about 80% of the deals that are done on the TV show never actually happen because the follow-up work doesn't always work, and a lot of stuff falls through and it doesn't happen. So
Okay.
this is where there is a in the BBC and all these kind of companies, there is a USS Cerritos that works for Dragon's Den.
I mean, I find that quite hilarious. Yeah.
So that's why I completely get it.
So Picard can learn his Eugene Chafors and wear his beaded headdresses all he likes. It still might get screwed up afterwards.
Yes, that's why you need the Cerritos following up behind.
Oh, excellent,
You know when
excellent.
you
What's your
said you yeah, you know when you said you didn't want to kill the rest of all the people.
yeah. Oh, brilliant. What's your second word?
I love it that somebody gets tasked to go around the ship and confiscate all the booty that shouldn't have been brought aboard from shore leave. And the fact that there's that much, there's a big cart and he's got everything from batlets to Romulan, like, well, it's not Romulan ale in it, it's Romulan drinks. So it's funny because it's quite true. It's almost like any time when you were younger, remember on the likes of Coronation Street, where the character's been off for a few weeks and they come back and they beat the spade and they've got the sombrero hat and they've got the teddy bear under their arm and they come back to the Rover's return. This kind of stuff.
And
Yeah,
that, of course,
I
gets.
get. I think it's it's like what is the transporter chief doing if he doesn't say it? They know it's getting beamed on or coming on board the shuttle or whatever. Come on, but no, I think the concept of it's one of the tasks of some of the kids to go around and make sure that all the dodgy stuff's there.
And of course, the contraband stuff that makes an appearance in a later episode as well, doesn't it?
Because
When
they've got the cupboard, haven't they, with everything
yeah,
in?
well, they got various like stashes of stuff, and that's when the Spock helmet got made canon, of course. Oh, you gotta love Mike McMahon. He's
Little acorns.
absolutely, absolutely. No, that's a cracking one. Um, Mine is the zombie infection just sort of coming out of nowhere. Uh, you know, gets bitten by a bug. That's it. He's a zombie now.
And how
Um,
fast it how fast it took hold.
yeah, and I suppose this is where kind of the Rick and Morty sort of vibe comes in a little bit. It's a weird mix of horror and comedy. I mean, you talked about like how would this work in live action? Yeah, it absolutely could work in live action, but it'd be horrendous. You'd want David Cronenberg doing that episode, which Star Trek has done. There are early episodes of Discovery that had some pretty horrific scenes. So, yeah, but yeah,
Well,
the
it's
zombie thing.
not. The thing is also, it's not like David Cronenberg isn't actually on the payroll of Star Trek.
I know, right? Exactly, exactly. Uh, yeah, but yeah, the whole zombie thing just coming out of nowhere. Um, I can't help but wonder, like, so if anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about here, there is a small scene in the new Strange New Worlds trailer that has what appears to be zombie Klingons or Klingon zombies, whichever you want to put it. I can't help but wonder, is that the planet they've gone to?
Yeah, those
There was,
those poor Klingons who are stuck not being able to get into Stovokora
I
until we'll see what happens.
know. There was a lovely little lower decks reference in Discovery when they talked about the one of the replicators only producing hot bananas,
Yes, yes.
which I thought was a really nice little, nod there.
To this
Yeah.
episode, yeah, yeah.
But, yeah, okay, what's your third weird?
The scene in sick bay where Tandy's having to hold on to a human heart.
Yes.
And yet, usually when you do stuff like that, it's just done in the abstract. And yeah, you can actually see how, you know, keep it pumping.
Yeah.
I mean, it's done for like almost like shock comedy effect, but it's
Yeah.
uh,
It's
it's
like
like
the
you wouldn't
patient's
you
still
would
awake. It's like, oh,
yeah.
that hurts.
I mean, it's like really where else could you get away with that kind of?
Yes.
You couldn't get there with a couldn't do that in any other Star Trek show. But it's
No,
definitely that's bat.
no.
Yeah.
At least you haven't been able to up till now. Who knows where it'll go?
Oh
Um,
God.
yeah, that's a really cool. And I love that he's got a line at the end, like when they're talking about the day. It's like, hold up. Oh. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Oh, yeah. Um, Mine is Mariner's mysterious past. Now I know later on in the season we expand on this and we find out a lot more, but in this one episode, it's just like she's very clearly got loads of experience and like there's clearly a lot more going on, and I think it's a fantastic setup, and like really weird that she would be an ensign.
Yeah, the only thing I find a little bit odd is at the point where Captain Ransom is wanting Boimler to like check on and keep an eye on her.
Hmm.
But isn't it at this point that she's been how long has she been on the Cerritos? Because it haven't him hasn't Boimler and her been on there for about a year. And possibly there's
I'm
something
not.
in the episode where it says it's about a year. So the timing the timing seem if they've been on the ship about a year together with that, some of this stuff would already be known and there'd be a bit more information around that, Mariner is the captain's daughter kind of thing.
I I got the impression it was a lot less than a year. From when she said that she was on the ship that made first contact
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
planet. So clearly she was on a different ship. And I mean, would it be a year between first and second contact?
You know how paperwork takes time.
Haven't they got AI to sort these things out now? Oh no, that's
Yeah,
how you get Skynet
they got AI. That's how it's like. No,
control. Yeah. But yeah, that's my thing anyway. Is just yeah, it's it's weird. There's something odd. But there we go. Oh, I think do you know what? Of all these that we've done so far, I don't think we have laughed as much with any as we have with this one.
because it's nuts. NVTS nuts, as they said in History of the World Part One.
Yeah. And it's also very telling that our weird three, I think this is the first time that we haven't had any that are even similar to each other's. Just shows how much weirdness there is in the episode. Yeah, yeah. But there we go, viewers. That's our mission report for the good, the bad, and the batshit of Lower Decks Second Contact. Now, if you enjoyed this deep space debrief, make sure you engage your impulse to like and share with your fellow Trekkies. Fire off any of your reactions in the comments below. What did you think was the best, the worst, and the craziest moments of this episode? Don't forget to subscribe as well and hit the notification bell so that you never miss a single review, bit of trivia, or breaking news on this channel. So until next time, peace and long life.
And live long and prosper. And please, can we have a movie?
Please, please, Mr. McMahon.
Would be ever so good.
He's not Santa.